Marcus puts his money into a rental property. Tall puts the exact same money into an index fund. Both of them spent the next 5 years certain they made the smarter move. They're both partly wrong because the last 5 years did something to these two investments that almost nobody saw coming, and the gap between them isn't what either of them would have guessed. Let's keep this fair. Marcus and Tall each have $100,000 to put to work in 2020. Same age, same city, same income, same starting point. The only thing that differs is where the money goes. Marcus uses his $100,000 as a 20% down payment on a $500,000 home and rents it out. Tall drops all $100,000 into a broad stock market index fund and never touches it again. 5 years later, we're going to open both their books and count everything. Not just the headline number, but everything. On day one, Marcus feels like the obvious winner. He has a deed, an address, a tenant, and something he can drive past on the weekend. Tall has a confirmation email. Marcus tells the story at dinner parties. Tall changes the subject when investing comes up. The emotional scoreboard isn't close. But emotions and returns are two very different things, and the next 5 years are about to prove it. Let's start with the asset everyone can see. Marcus's house. Over the last 5 years, U.S. home prices rose sharply early, then cooled as mortgage rates climbed. A $500,000 home bought in 2020 is worth very roughly $620,000 to $680,000 today, depending on the market. Call it $650,000. That's around 30% appreciation on the property's full value. But here's the part that makes property seductive. Marcus didn't put in $500,000. He put in $100,000. That $150,000 gain on his original $100,000 down payment is the magic of leverage, and it's the single biggest reason property creates so many millionaires. Now, Tall. Over that same window, a broad U.S. index fund roughly doubled even after the 2022 drawdown. His $100,000 grew to somewhere around $190,000 to $210,000. Call it $200,000. No leverage, no tenant, no second mortgage. Just a number on a screen that he barely looked at. So, on appreciation alone, Marcus's equity gain is about $150,000. Tall's gain is about $100,000. Marcus is ahead. The property crowd was right all along, except we've only counted the number everyone talks about. We haven't counted everything that comes out before Marcus keeps a single dollar. Start with the mortgage. Marcus borrowed $400,000. Over 5 years, the vast majority of his payments went to interest, not principal. At the rates of the early 2020s, that's well over $100,000 in interest paid, and he's only chipped maybe $35,000 off the loan balance. Then, property taxes, roughly $6,000 a year, $30,000 over 5 years. Insurance, another $10,000 to $15,000. Maintenance and the occasional emergency, a new HVAC, a roof patch, a water heater, vacancy between tenants, easily $25,000 across 5 years, if he's lucky, and far more if he isn't. Yes, the rent helped. At maybe $2,800 a month, Marcus collected around $168,000 in rent over 5 years. But his mortgage, taxes, insurance, and upkeep ate almost all of it. After every real cost, Marcus's rental ran close to break even on cash flow. Some years slightly positive, some slightly negative. The rent didn't make him rich. It mostly paid the bills on the asset that was making him rich. Meanwhile, Tall spent $0 on maintenance, 0 on property tax, 0 on interest. He paid a fund fee so small, it rounds to nothing. Every dollar of his gain stayed his. Now let's check the real scoreboard at year 5. Marcus's net worth from this investment is his equity, roughly $250,000 in home value minus what he still owes, landing somewhere around $250,000 of equity. But he poured in his $100,000 down payment plus tens of thousands in out-of-pocket costs the rent didn't cover, plus hundreds of hours of his own time managing the thing. Tall's net worth from his investment is about $200,000, and his out-of-pocket beyond the original $100,000 was zero, and his time invested was essentially zero. When you line them up honestly, they're far closer than day one suggested. Marcus may be modestly ahead in raw dollars, thanks entirely to leverage, but Tall got there with no debt, no tenants, no 2 a.m. phone calls, and the ability to sell his entire position in a single afternoon. Marcus's wealth is locked in one house, in one zip code that takes months to sell and thousands in fees to exit. If I only showed you the case for stocks, I'd be doing exactly what every index fund influencer does. So here's the honest other side. The last 5 years were unusually kind to stocks. A different 5-year window, say one that ended in a crash, could have left Tall down 30% at the worst possible moment, and the data is brutally clear that most investors panic and sell at the bottom. Property's value is far steadier. You don't watch your house drop 34% in a month and lose sleep over it. And Marcus's leverage, the thing that amplified his gains, only worked because property values rose. In a falling market, that same leverage amplifies losses just as fast. So when does each one actually win? Property wins when you buy in a market with strong rent-to-price ratios, when you treat it like a business instead of a side hustle, and when you hold long enough for leverage and loan pay down to compound. It also wins for people who simply will not stay invested through a stock market crash. A house you can't easily sell is, ironically, protection from your own worst instincts. Stocks win when you value liquidity, diversification, and zero maintenance, when you don't want a second job, and when you have the discipline to keep buying while everyone else is panicking. And here's the multiplier nobody mentions. Adding money to an index fund is effortless and compounds instantly. Adding money to property usually means buying another property, taking on another mortgage, and doubling your workload. So, which one had the higher return over the last 5 years? On leveraged equity gain, property edged it out. On return for every hour and every dollar of stress, stocks won walking away. The truthful answer is that Marcus's house produced a bigger headline number and Tall's fund produced a better life. And here's the real trap. The trap is choosing either one based on a 5-year window, a viral headline, or what your cousin bragged about at Thanksgiving, without running the full numbers for your own situation, your own market, and your own temperament. The last 5 years favored property's leverage. The next 5 might do the opposite. Nobody ringing a bell tells you in advance. So the next time someone tells you property always wins or the market always wins, ask them one question. Did you count everything? Because the answer that counts everything is the only answer that's ever mattered.